going to be at the intersection of Madison and Wetzel, and the T4 is the abutting neighborhoods. Next slide. Form-based codes, here's an example of it, and this is the one we use to establish, the wide sidewalks and the distance between street trees and other design elements. And then there's building disposition, which is also in the form-based code. It deals with where you place the houses in relation to having an edge yard, side yard, rear yard, and front yard. And then we allow for certain building heights. The max height in the T5 is going to be 4 floors with the accessory top floor, I believe. And then T4 is lower. And these are some parking configurations that are allowed in T4 and T5 zone. I'll go through most of this pretty quick because a lot of us are very familiar with this, especially after the other presentations. Next, please. Okay, so this is the form-based code design alternative. It's most densest at the initial intersection. The highest building is 55 feet, and that would be this one, which has an arcade in the front and allows for a lot of street activity. There's crosswalks, and I say that it's context sensitive because of what we call community preferred architecture. And really, the community preferred architecture was more or less Bob Igo designating what he thought was very character and absolutely must stay. And having seen that, I agree with him. The buildings that we are keeping are here and that one up top as well. In the form-based code, we allowed for setbacks of 2 feet, and then the others were abutted right on the street. There's obviously street trees, and then we try to keep with the central parking stuff, shared parking. This has a total of 146 plus parking spaces. And here, yet again, is the massing for it, and the sections which show, 60 feet is the highest. It's large, it's very dense. And so you can see the massings of it, the central courtyards again, the configurations of those. Next, please.
The other scheme that we looked at is placemaking. Currently, there's a movement toward form-based code design, and obviously backed by the city of Cincinnati to investigate ways that Madisonville can promote form-based code, educate their residents, and use it as a viable alternative for revitalizing the neighborhood business district. So this alternative here doesn't necessarily adhere to some of the setback requirements or even some of the density requirements, but it's kind of an amalgamation of the existing zoning code as well as the form-based code scheme. The roadway here on Madison, instead of having a 2-lane roadway with optional parking on both sides, we decided to have more of a boulevard layout with lane cutouts at the intersection of Madison and Wetzel. That allows for more of a beautification effort, thins the line between pedestrian space as well as vehicular space. The slip lane on the southeast corner over on that upper left quadrant there, that's the northwest corner. That's currently where the shopping center is located. We wanted to set back the roadway because we didn't actually have the spatial constraints to be able to expand it and actually move it farther back so that the existing building and then eventual infill would be closer to the street. And then a separated bikeway on the south portion of Madison, as I explained earlier, has a planted buffer and then a 2-way bikeway of 6-foot lanes in each direction. And then the infill development on the west and southeastern corners is more of a layered effect so that there's an opportunity to not only have buildings facing Madison, but also facing Wetzel and having that visible shop front advertisement, if you will, to be both visible from traffic coming on Wetzel and on Madison. And so here's our sonometric as well as our section views. We have a little bit lower infill building heights. 50 feet is the maximum. That adheres more to the existing zoning to the south of our site, which is a little bit lower building heights, but a little bit more flexibility with the density. 125 feet is the traversal width from corner to corner, or from building to building, on one side of Wetzel and to the other. But you do have an opportunity with public space, which I'll show in just a second, to be able to, bridge that gap. Now here's kind of a zoom in of the public space we're talking about here. Now that I understand that in some books this is an engineering nightmare, but keep in mind that a lot of these, this scheme right here is open to flexibility. The design here is, the design approach is to create more of a traffic calming device along Wetzel. And then of course the separated bike lane acts as a traffic calming device along with the boulevard scheme to slow down traffic and to really centralize activity in this node. And here's a look to the southeast. We have canopies on the shop fronts on the lower floors of the layered development, infill development, with a max of 4 stories. We didn't really want to dictate in this scheme the use per se, because the maximum build out of this sort of proposal will be possibly office and possibly residential. And then here's the internal parking. Both schemes, both form-based as well as placemaking, a max of 150 spaces, or an average of 40 to 50 spaces per corner. And I just wanted to point out too that that parking within the block is regulated with an access point off Wetzel for entrance, and then to Ward or Ravina for exit.
Okay, finally, we just have a few takeaway points, and these kind of apply to all of the business district posters and presentations as well. But basically, we need to have this community charrette in order to find out what Madisonville really wants to do with the area, if they want to densify, if they want to have a placemaking, if they want to use form-based codes. And then also, we recommend that if they do decide to do a form-based code, which is how they're kind of leaning anyway, that they should incorporate some of these placemaking criteria that we've kind of outlined here with the different precedences that we do. And then also, let's see, central civic spaces are conducive to sustainable commercial corridors. So if Madisonville really wants to, get on the map, if they want to become a place, they can use some of these tools to kind of create that space for themselves. And then also, we think that the current zoning is inadequate to steer Madisonville business district towards the regional significance that it's trying to achieve. Basically, that just means that how the zoning is set up now, you have 50-foot setbacks, you can have strip malls that have parking in front, you have drive-through McDonald's popping up everywhere, and there's a lot of vacant lots. So developers who want to buy there won't necessarily create the dense buildings that we'd like to see for a place-making environment, for a dense community. This is the center of Madisonville type of environment. So those are basically the takeaway points. And
questions, comments, criticism?